The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, the OPEC, reported this month that Venezuela recorded the highest average crude oil production in June. In Argentina, the University of Buenos Aires declared itself in salary emergency for professors and non-teaching staff due to a lack of agreement with the libertarian government of Javier Milei. And top leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, assured they will stop attacking Israel if a peace agreement is reached between Tel Aviv and the Palestinian resistance. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. And we begin in Venezuela. The presidential candidate of the Greek patriotic poll, Nicolás Maduro, was received by the people of the Barinas state in support of his electoral campaign for the elections to be held on July 28th. With a great gathering, the inhabitants of the state raised slogans reaffirming their support to the candidacy of the current Venezuelan president and condemning the unilateral U.S. sanctions. In this regard, the candidate for the Greek patriotic poll thanked the people for their unconditional support to defeat the actions of the far right wing and imperialism against national stability. Maduro further condemned the old neoliberal model imposed in Argentina by current President Javier Milei, who has fired almost 300,000 workers, allowed the entry of the U.S. Southern Command into the country, resigning to sovereignty over the Malvinas Islands.
Pueblo argentino.
So the people of Argentina wanted a change and Milei appeared, a deceiver, a fascist, a fake, Milei representing the old decrepit of the Nazi ideology, Milei representing the old decrepit of the wild capitalism. And how is the people of Argentina now? They deeply regret their votes, as there have been almost 300,000 layoffs. Is that what you want? Is that what the people of Barinas want? Milei destroyed public education, closed universities, went against science, technology, public health. Milei delivered the US a part of the South Atlantic territory for installing a US military base. He even recognized the Malvinas to England. Do you want a puppet to come and deliver the Essequibo to the White House?
And at the invitation of the National Electoral Council and in compliance with the Barbados Agreement of October 2023, the panel of electoral experts of the United Nations arrived in Venezuela to work during the presidential elections of July 2024. The panel is made up of 4 specialists with extensive experience in electoral techniques and will remain in the country until a few days after the elections are over. The members of the delegation will enjoy total freedom of movement to meet with political and social actors of different denominations. These specialists are part of the more than 635 international experts that will participate in the elections. And we go live now to Caracas, specifically to the Petare neighborhood, to contact our special envoy, Yunus Soner, who has the latest on this run-up to the Venezuela's presidential elections. Welcome, Yunus. How's everything there?
Hello, good morning from Petare, a neighborhood located in the east of Caracas, Venezuela. I am right now in the Cristo Square, which you see behind me. This is the center of Petare. Petare is an important neighborhood. It is the second biggest favela in all of Latin America. It has a population of more than 500,000 people, and the campaign here has already started. As you can see in the background, you see some posters of President Maduro, the candidate of the Great Patriotic Poll, driving around the neighborhood and trying to convince the voters. And there is something else here which is, I think, very important also in the context of the July 28 elections. The Venezuelan government is taking these elections very seriously, and this is a good example of how they do it. This is a so-called electoral fair, an electoral stand, if you will, where citizens are taught how they will going to vote on July 28th. Now, first they approach here and present their identity, then they give their footprint on the machine, and they are recognized as a citizen. Then behind this cage is the electric voting machine, which we cannot display according to the rules of the National Electoral Commission due to reasons of security. There they choose their candidate of their liking, and they receive a paper ballot. And then they take this paper ballot to place it into the cage in the back. As you see, this is the cage, and there they place it. So this is a process which is displayed to all citizens who would like to learn what they have to do on July 28th to cast their votes. This shows that the government takes it very seriously to educate all citizens who would like to cast their vote on July 28th, so they know that it is a simple process, it's easy to be done. Some coordinators whom we spoke to said that this process takes approximately 25 seconds, if you have made your mind politically, of course. This fulfilling the process takes 25 seconds. Now, there are 81 stands like this, the one behind me, all over Caracas city, and there are 976 stands all over the country, as announced the National Electoral Council. The National Electoral Council also provides the addresses of each of them so that citizens can look up on the internet and look for the stand which is closest to them to go and learn how that process works. The Venezuelan government, that's worth reminding, has also made a simulation of the election on June 30th, where thousands of people already attended a simulation, as I mentioned, of the voting. And this simulation tested the voting machines, tested the counting process, tested the connections between the voting machines and the National Electoral Council. So this is a very thoroughly prepared process here. And on July 28th, there will be 30,000 voting machines all over the country in 15,000 voting centers. As you mentioned in the introduction, yesterday the Foreign Minister Ivan Gil held a press conference, or rather a meeting with the representatives of the foreign diplomatic staff here in Caracas, and he said that 625 watchers, international watchers, will be present here in the country to watch the process. And at the same time, the voting machines are also being checked by all political representatives, that they are well prepared, that the connections are good. All political parties, all candidates have their representatives in the auditoriums checking the voting machines and their connections with the center. So the process, the election process, is very thoroughly prepared here, and it's going on. Venezuela is waiting for the July 28th to cast their votes, the citizens, and we see that everyone here is very full of joy to express its political decision in the presidential elections. And we see that the government is thinking of various aspects of how to organize this protest thoroughly so that everything goes smooth and well.
Thank you, Yunus, for all this valuable information from site. It's truly important to have these backstories to follow the electoral process from abroad. We'll contact you again following all the updates from the Venezuelan election campaigns. That was teleSUR's special envoy, Yunus Soner, coming to us live from Petare, Venezuela. And we continue in Venezuela as the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries reported this month that Venezuela recorded the highest average crude oil production in June. In this sense, the OPEC reported that the national oil production of Venezuela grew 4.62% in just one quarter from April through June. The feat evidences the remarkable recovery of the industry that registers today a daily production of 922,000 barrels, despite an industrial income of $0, influenced in no small part by the impact of the illegal U.S. sanctions imposed on the nation. Regardless, the achievement puts Venezuela the country with the largest proven crude oil reserves in the world, once again at the same levels as other strong members of the OPEC. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. In Argentina, the Higher Council of the University of Buenos Aires declared a salary emergency for professor and non-teaching staff due to a lack of agreement with the libertarian government of Javier Milei. The governing body of one of the most important higher education institutions in the country, which is made up of the rector, deans, professors, and students, backed the salary claim of workers in view of the 40% loss in the purchasing power of salaries during the first semester of the year. The council expressed its concern for the hierarchy of the activity, including the fair remuneration of the work performed. Since President Milei took office, the universities have been in conflict over the budget and cuts in higher education spending. In Brazil, the proposed amendment to the constitution that decrees a temporary framework for the demarcation of native community lands was suspended in the context of the Brazilian Senate's Constitution and Justice Committee. As expressed in the proposed amendment, demarcation can only be carried out in regions already occupied by tribal communities since October 1988, when the federal constitution was enacted. The Commission's decision came after the Federal Supreme Court established the first meeting of a conciliation commission focused on the demarcation of Aboriginal village lands, a meeting planned for August 5th, which would be supported by the native communities that would request the removal of this issue from the Senate's agenda. And the Permanent Criminal Chamber of the Supreme Court of Peru denied on Wednesday the legal appeal for the protection of rights filed by former President Pedro Castillo, requesting the exclusion of the police intervention record derived from his arrest on December 2022. However, the Supreme Court argued in its ruling that there are no reasonable grounds to understand that on the occasion of the police intervention and the first proceedings carried out, there was material vulnerability or a serious violation of the normal course of the proceedings. Former President Castillo was under investigation for several allegations of corruption and was facing an impeachment process in Congress when he announced that he was closing the parliament and installing an emergency government. On Wednesday in El Salvador, the non-governmental organization Cristosal presented a report revealing that 261 people, 4 of them minors, have died in local prisons in the middle of the exception regime. In this sense, the report, entitled "Silence is Not an Option," collects information from family members and primary sources between March 2022 and April of 2024 as part of President Nayib Bukele's policy of persecution, which, according to its supporters, is aimed at reducing the level of violence in the country. Precisely, the investigations based on forensic reports indicate that 88 of the deaths may have been the result of a criminal act.
They have died in Salvadoran jails and dungeons due to torture, cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment, lack of food, unhealthy conditions, lack of medical attention, among other situations. But there is a deliberate policy not to protect people deprived of their freedom, and we already know the speeches of government officials who call for and sow hatred against these people. This is also one of the most painful impacts because they are not known. Hundreds of children are unprotected and abandoned. More than 80,000 people have been arrested, and most of them have children. Who takes care of the children?
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, speaking at the NATO summit in Washington, said that new levels of agreement had been reached aimed at countering China's role in Asia. According to Blinken, to achieve this, they will act as a bridge between the European side of the Atlantic and the Indian region of the Pacific. The senior U.S. politician said that there is greater convergence on how to deal with China. Meanwhile, the secretary explained that his country, during the administration of current U.S. President Joe Biden, has identified the Asian giant as a challenge to the pace. Moreover, they find China to be a nation that puts national security at risk. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Thursday, the top leader of the Lebanese resistance movement Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, assured that they will stop attacking Israel if a peace agreement is reached between Tel Aviv and the Palestinian resistance. Nasrallah's statement was made during a tribute to former Hezbollah commander Muhammad Nasser Abu Nima, who was assassinated by Israel. In this context, he reiterated that the resistance movement has prepared for the worst scenarios, but they want to give the ceasefire a chance, although he clarified that if the Zionist state attacks Lebanon during this period, they will respond forcefully. Nasrallah also reminded the Ministry of Defense of the Tel Aviv regime that their army has not been able to advance in Rafah, which is a small area, indicating that Israel's threats to invade Lebanon seem unfounded. And delegations from Egypt, Qatar, and the United States held in Doha a new round of negotiations between the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas and Israel for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. During the meeting, a three-phase ceasefire plan was discussed, subsequently announced by U.S. President Joe Biden, which includes a 6-week ceasefire, a permanent end to hostilities, and the reconstruction of Gaza. However, experts said that the structure of the current truce agreement lacks a clear commitment by Tel Aviv. It should be noted that Egypt, Qatar, and the United States have been leading indirect talks between Hamas and Israel for months now, with a view to establish an end to the Israeli genocide in the Gaza Strip, which has so far claimed more than 38,000 Palestinian lives. And the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East, the UNRWA, denounced on Wednesday the attack for 4 consecutive days on educational facilities serving in Gaza. Commissioner General of the UNRWA, Felipe Lazzarini, argued that 4 schools were attacked in the last 4 days and added that since the war began, 2/3 of UNRWA schools in Gaza have been attacked. On his X account, he expressed that schools have gone from safe places of education and hope for children to overcrowded shelters and often ending up a place of death and misery. For their part, Israeli occupation forces dropped ballots from a plane over Gaza City, urging all residents to evacuate immediately. In the same way, the Palestinian Red Crescent Society also said that Gaza residents are desperate. We go now to sports. Colombia defeated Uruguay 1-0 in their Copa America semifinal on Wednesday, despite being reduced to 10 men before halftime in a game that ended with ugly scenes as players entered the crowd to confront fans. Jefferson Lerma's header got his team in the victory. The three-color team will be Argentina's opponent in the championship's final on Sunday at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, and will try to win its second Copa America in history after they won it as hosts in 2001, while the Albiceleste team could become the tournament's top winner by surpassing Uruguay, since they both are equal in victories at 15. One day earlier, at the same time, Uruguay will face Canada in the match that will define the third and fourth place of the competition. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For Telesur English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.